Hey everyone, welcome back to Absolutely Marvel and DC. My name is Benny, that is Sal, and today we're going to be talking about a controversial tweet from our friend Rob over at Comics Explained.
It is a treat, isn't it? It's a treat to get such a buzzing conversation going.
I guess. I don't know.
I guess.
So Rob tweeted out, I feel like the critics who gave Black Adam low scores are the kind of people who sit around drinking wine while listening to fancy music and saying that movies are art. Now, I don't know. I haven't spoken about the tweet directly at all. I could have, probably should have, but I did not.
Right? I know a lot of other people in our sphere did. They were like, oh, I got something to say about this. And I'm like, wow.
I know Rob well enough to know, I could tell you, he doesn't think out what he's tweeting. Sal could tell you the same thing. He just has an idea and throws it out, and he doesn't worry about the context or how people are going to take it. In his head, it makes sense. Yep. I don't know what he means by this tweet.
You can only take it by what it says,
right?
But like, and if you don't know Rob, then you don't know that he just goes like, "Here's a thing I'm gonna say." Meh. Like I saw people quote retweeting it, being like, "What is a fancy music? Like, well, I'm gonna listen to fancy music. What's not fancy music?" And I'm like, he doesn't know. He doesn't care. Like he just said whatever came to his head. Like,
but people took this as Rob stating that comic book movies are not art.
Well, he said movies.
So he said
art.
Movies, which I'm sorry, Martin Scorsese would vastly disagree.
Right. I think we could probably just be like, movies are art. Okay, we did it. But superhero movies now, because like that's the real question.
Well, so
movies are art. You can't argue that like Lawrence of Arabia, Godfather, Taxi Driver, like these aren't
I've
art.
always quantified movies into three different brackets. Okay. There is the artsy movies. Mm-hmm. Which, Lawrence of Arabia, a Martin Scorsese film, God's Father, pretty much anything by the guy that did the Royal Tenenbaums. What's his name?
Wes Anderson.
Everything he does is all artsy, like all on the angles, things like that.
A lot of work goes into it, yeah.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of movies with very artistic angles and artwork, and like they'll do a lot of like color and things like that. The second for me is always what I call the popcorn movies. Right. Popcorn movies are the kind of movie that you don't want to overthink. You just want to munch your popcorn, enjoy explosions or laughter or comedy. A lot of raunchy comedies fall into popcorn movies.
Right.
Like, we all remember American Pie as being funny and great. None of us are going to sit here and say American Pie is a piece of art.
I mean, and that's where I'd have to like not necessarily disagree, but like because especially high school me would have like punched me in the nuts for saying like, oh, American Pie is art. But like I think that film is art. Like I think that film in its I will agree with that. If we're looking at it from a broad spectrum, I agree. Right? Film is art. You're talking to a former art student. I mean, film is art. Photography is art. Artwork, sketching and stuff. It's an expression of creative imagination.
Yes. That is art. I mean, by that though, what we do on YouTube is art, and I would argue it could be because it isn't a creative expression. I'm not going to get into
that.
It's a creative expression, though. Is what I'm saying.
It is a creative expression. I won't go so far as to pat myself on the back and say I create art.
I will say that you create art, Sal.
Well, I appreciate it. So do you. Comics are art. Movies are art. Movies are art. Undisputedly, it's one of the greatest art forms that America has brought to the table.
So I think we can agree that we disagree. If Rob is actually stating that movies aren't art, we are disagreeing wholeheartedly on that.
Right, we disagree. Let's put it that way.
But I'd like to dissect what he's talking about here.
Yeah.
Okay. So his argument is that he feels that the critics who are giving it low scores were expecting this movie to be artwork. I got into an actual debate with someone on my Twitter about this because I said that the movie it's a good movie. It's an okay movie. It does a great job of getting across what it wants to do. It's a lot of great action. The characters are portrayed well. Not my all-time favorite superhero movie, but definitely not one that's going to get just thrown under the rug. And the response was, should we only accept it's okay for superhero movies in this day and age?
Right.
And I think that more pertains to what he's saying with the lower scores related to Black Adam. Should we be expecting every superhero movie to be this grandiose piece of art that, you're like, oh my God, look at all the crazy choices they made and all the daring maneuvers they made with the storytelling and all. What do you think, Sal?
I think that it really has a lot to do with intent. And of course, you don't really know the intent behind every movie because movies are like take thousands of people to make. But like, that when you watch enough of it, and especially by one particular creator, you start to notice patterns, and so you can like start to extrapolate at least a working theory. But when it comes to like superhero movies, I think that an acceptance of superhero movies as like, well, that's going to hit a certain number, of quality on a scale, and that's always going to be the number. And so I'm going to judge it less harshly than I would like a Wes Anderson movie or something else that came out because of the nature of its content. I think that's felonious, and I don't really agree with it. I think that like that helps people. I think that like that mentality helps people feel better about going to see them or not going to see them. But it doesn't help the genre. It doesn't help the format. There are some things that I would say the most egregious thing the superhero movies do is like they normalize the overworking of VFX artists. You know what I mean? Like that in and of itself, like if there's one like ill towards the film industry that superhero movies are guilty of, it's that. And normalizing it to such a degree where it's like, the last few Disney Plus and theatrical Marvel movies have looked pretty crappy.
Yeah.
Like just overall. And when we find out that these VFX groups are like overworked and underpaid and, that they're like, they're barely surviving, like I see why. And, but if we all go to see those movies and we go like, that was amazing, it was the greatest thing in the world, like that helps nobody, because it doesn't hold them to a standard and expectation. Like art in and of itself, especially visual art, is meant to be viewed and judged by the audience, and like good or bad is subjective, but of course it's all about the masses and how like the majority feels about it in terms of its like longevity and its general acceptance into the zeitgeist. When it comes to like superhero movies, if we all just clap our hands and shut our eyes and like just accept the fact that like we're seeing a thing that has a character that has a superhero logo on their chest, and it doesn't matter if it like looks like crap or if they say stupid one-dimensional things, if it's just them doing the thing that they've been doing for 10 years, that doesn't help anybody. If we just go like, yay, like we should be like, that didn't look very good. Or that was really one-dimensional, or that lacked an entire B plot. We talked about Morbius not too long ago, and it's like Morbius is one of those movies where you would argue like it's a bad movie, and it's like, is it a bad movie? Because like technically, you watch Morbius. Morbius is a film. It is technically a movie, and it follows a structure, and that structure is Mad Libs. But Mad Libs in and of themselves create a story and a sentence, right? Like if you fill out the Mad Libs by their design, then you will have a story. It might be dumb or nonsensical, but it will still be a story that follows a structure. Fine. That's what Morbius is. And so you can't like fault Morbius on its inability to light a scene, or edit or edit a sequence or mix music. Like I've seen movies that fail to do those three things. Just basic stuff. Yeah. Morbius does that. Should Morbius exist? That's a whole different conversation. And it's
that actually brings me to another conversation our chat brought up. Movies are made for two reasons. Straight passion for a project. Edgar Wright films are notorious for this. He'll quit a project if he no longer has passion in it. That's what he did with the original Ant-Man.
Yeah,
and they're also made to make money.
Right.
Would you consider a project made to simply commercialize and make money, like a superhero film is 99% of the time, piece of art? That because our chat is arguing that they don't consider those art. So that would be superhero flicks. That would be Transformers. Those are the commercialized products that are just there to get our money out of us.
Absolutely.
Horror films. I love artsy horror films. But you can also get a Halloween flick where they're just running away from Michael Myers.
Yeah, but the last Halloween movie was about something. I genuinely begrudgingly say that even the worst movies are art. I cite The Room from Tommy Wiseau. That
is art. I will give you that. You know what? If we're going to quantify The Room as art, then we can quantify Black Adam as a piece of art.
It is. By the way, just because art exists doesn't mean that you have to inherently like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I will admit that The Rock by Michael Bay is art. It may be stupid. And you may not like it. I love it, but like it's a very different reason, but like the fact is, and by the way, it's like pedantic and silly, and like you could see Michael Bay like watching real movies, and when I say real movies, I mean like movies that are made with intent, and being like, ooh, an angle that I could try, or like, ooh, an actor that's in a movie I actually respect, I'll put them in it. You can watch them like hackily do things, but The Room is art. Like the guy who made it needed to make it. He felt it in his blood. He had to tell this story. Now, is it stupid and terrible and nonsensical and technically wrong in every way? Like, yeah. And it's great because even that is artistic. The interpretation, the acceptance of it by the audience. I've seen that movie like 10 times. And every fourth time, I will get a new interpretation of that movie out. Like sometimes I'll watch it and I'll be like, this is a vanity project by a narcissist who needs to like justify something he really did in real life through fiction.
Right.
And then sometimes I'll watch it and I'll like really feel bad for him. Like I'll be like, I will see like the pain in that man's eyes, and I'll be like, it's really sad that he needed to tell this story, that he felt that he wasn't aware of himself enough to stop himself at any point during this production. Like, that's sad. And then other times I'll be like, this guy's a misogynist, and he like desperately needs to like be right and be in charge and be on top. And like every time he interacts with a woman, it is always in a position of authority. How gross and weird. Like, so you know what I mean? Like, that's three different interpretations of a bad, stupid movie that shouldn't exist, that we should never have seen. And it's like, that's artistic. Superhero movies, if they make you feel anything, because like I saw a movie recently that I won't spoil, but it was a superhero movie that everybody's talking about, and it stars The Rock, and I was like, this is really dumb. Like,
we're going to talk about that in a minute, so you'll get that review out soon for those.
Very dumb, and I was like really upset. Like at certain points where I'm like, this is like a fan wrote a movie. Like the fans that are on Twitter wrote a movie. And like I could predict lines based on just cynically guessing what a tweet would say the movie should have done if it had done what movies do. And I was right like 8 times out of 10. And it's like, but that in and of itself,
but it is art. Is the point?
Is artistic, like, because I had an interpretation and I had a reaction to it, and it made me feel things, and and holding films accountable for what they do, and giving them accolades, yes, but holding them accountable as well. It is better for the process, because look, you don't spend $600 million to put out this thing on a screen across America, across the world, to not get a reaction, and to expect everyone to just clap their hands and accept it for what it is hubris and insane. Like the truth is, they need negative or any kind of reaction, and that in of itself is artistic. I genuinely think that like superhero movies can be and are implicitly art because of the nature of the format. It's like
I agree with you 100%, but I got one last example I want to do to close this out.
Yeah.
Because I just thought of this. We have a great example across the both boards here. Joss Whedon's Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League.
They're two different movies.
They're two different movies, but one is inherently a more artistic approach to it. Yeah. But would we still discontinue Joss Whedon's Justice League as a piece of art?
Right. It's interesting because like it is a reinterpretation. It's actually, I would argue that like, you know, there is no you never got to see the real Zack Snyder Justice League.
Oh, I've argued this since the beginning. Once he asked for $70 million to shoot additional scenes, that means whatever the original version was, we will never see. We're going to see a new version, which is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
And by the way, we're seeing Zack Snyder post Justice League's failure and his ejection from the studio. Just his interpretation. He could change the entire narrative flow of the movie for the new version of himself that has taken place. Like Zack Snyder, the man who did Justice League in the beginning, is not the same Zack Snyder who made the new cut. Yeah. Because he's in two complete... One is like, I'm on top of the world, and I'm telling a huge story, and I'm going to have 2 parts, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And the other one, it's like, my daughter committed suicide, and like, I was kicked out of this thing, and they took my movie, and they made it badder, and like, you know, all this stuff. Like, these are 2 different men who did 2 different movies, and one you never got to see. So that in and of itself is interesting and fascinating and artistic and blah, blah, blah. But Joss Whedon's Justice League is, I would argue, almost transformative, because he had to come in and make something out of a thing he didn't believe in at all. Like, you know what I mean? It's like having someone re-edit a movie for you, but from the
going back to
up.
the Richard Donner cut of Superman.
Yeah.
I have the same situation happened with that. Why is it always DC movies that do that?
I don't know. I mean, Marvel's made some pretty bad movies, especially during the time of like Richard Donner and stuff. Like, you should check out those Captain America flicks. But
I'm going to steal a car.
Right? And they went, I just got, oh, no, I have diarrhea. Do you too? No, I'm taking your car. Wow, what a hero. But, Yeah, no, even the Snyder Cut is art, and because he believed in it and the audience got something out of it. And like, there's a lot of, there's a lot of examples of that. But I would say that like even Joss Whedon's, because it produced something that the audience then just took at face value and felt and interpreted and reacted to.
I feel like we just have to agree all movies are art. Regardless of you liking them or subjective or whatever, all movies are a form of art.
Right.
Even something as campy as Evil Dead 2 to as far as Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League to Martin Scorsese's Godfather. It was him.
It was Francis Ford Coppola. He made Goodfellas.
My bad.
That's all right. Yeah.
I'm trying to make a point, and I think you get my point, is what I'm saying.
You do.
Like,
I think you do. Yeah.
They're all, and you know what? Just to bring it back around and kind of close out, that in turn makes American Pie art.
Oh yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, like, I don't. Yeah, I think it is. It was made. Yeah, Porky's was made for the same reason. It's a titillating sex comedy.
Yep,
and that's it. And then that's.
I mean,
but at the end, you can see like they're trying to say something.
I'm a former art major. I've said it before. I've brought it up a few times, but I also do go to like museums and I look at artwork.
Yeah,
there are some sexy art out there. There is some really sexy art out there. I mean, my Twitter is all just sexy art. That's still art. Just because it's an overly sexualized thing does not make it less artsy.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies to Porky's. So
right. Exactly. Or Bashojo statues art. That's a different topic.
Yep. But all right, guys, we are going to close out here. Let me know your opinions down below. What do you consider? Because I agree. If we consider some movies art, all movies are art. They're all put on an art scale. So
that's right.
Thank you guys so much. I'm Benny. That is Sal. We'll see you next time right here.